Was able to take on more responsibility, upskill myself, transitioned into credit risk as a credit underwriter, where we underwrite um, consumer loans. Then we also underwrite SME loans at that time, and I began to, take um, make it intentional to upskill myself by learning, some data analytics tools. At that time, I was learning SQL. I learned Python. I also learned Neo4j and Cypher, and I had good command of spreadsheets, be it Google Sheets, Excel, WPS. At that time, I had good command of XPSS too. I mean, a bit of background about the transition journey. So I moved on to Software Trust, another product-led company that deals with, different kind of lendings, from automated lendings to SME to BNPL and whatnot, right? Where I actually developed my first product. I wrote my first product paper. I mean, it was an interesting journey moving from core analytics to core product creation. So I was more like the product champion. Then I moved on to a company that is not listed yet. It's not a product-led company, Shower Technology, a company that provides, consumer loans to to you know to their customers actually, and I basically undo the portfolio monitoring part as well as the collections bit. So it's more like I have a bit of the credit cycle from what the customers are complaining about as a customer success agent to the trends and pattern when a customer requests for a loan, and to what the company face in terms of recovering the debt. And I've also consulted for quite a number of companies, one of which is Seamless HR. Yeah, before moving on to finding my own company, Pivox Technology Limited, where we use AI to solve credit lapses because I have lived credit actually, right? So we deal with bank statement analysis, loan engine, predictive modeling via just CSV file upload. And yeah, these are part of the deliverables that we have on the Pivox side. So moving on to the main reason why we are all here, credit tech, right? Um, all right. Please feel free to drop comments in the chat, right? So credit technology, like the name implies, is a combination of two arms. The first is credit risk, right? Majority of us here, as I can see, we are risk practitioners, right? And we all know what credit risk is: credit and the risk involved in giving credit, right? And the risk involved in credit, obviously, is the customer is not going to pay you back, right? And yeah, we also have technology. I mean, like the name implies, tools, systems, softwares, methods that are designed to solve problems. I mean, the essence of having technology is to make life easier for us, right? Technology should be able to improve efficiency, should be able to automate, and also enable better decision making, right? From as I mean, from Microsoft Stack to Google Stack to AI, right? And also to automation itself using scripts, right? So a combination of both credit risk and technology is actually what bettered credit technology, which is credit tech. So it's basically the application of these tools, the automation, the analytics, the softwares to improve how credit is being accessed, right? Processed, monitored, and managed. I mean, other than using the the traditional approach we would get into during the course of this session, the technology is designed to make it easier for you, right? Um, so in 2025, I mean, we have some roles that basically, when you check openings in product-led companies, I wouldn't mention any name, but as far as Nigeria is concerned, we have quite a number of digital lenders, right? Um, I'm sure you have one on top of your mind now. So when you see their openings that has to do with risk, I mean, there are some requirements that you'll be like, oh, are you sure you're looking for a credit risk analyst or you're looking for a data scientist, right? I mean, some roles, when you look at the JD, you feel that, oh, I mean, I can't apply for it because you don't have that skill set. Now, it is more interesting that we have emerging roles in 2025. And on top of the list is the credit risk data scientist. It is one thing to be a data scientist, and it is another thing to be a credit risk data scientist. Like the name implies, a data scientist with credit risk knowledge, right? And what they do basically, they build machine learning and models to predict defaults, right? They also score customers and they optimize the lending decision. We have the query risk data engineer. And what they basically do is they design and manage the data pipelines, the architecture of the data, um, to enhance, credit modeling and analytics, right? So it's more of a mix of a personnel with credit risk experience and data engineering. We have the credit scoring model developer, and what they basically do is to create and maintain scorecards, right? We have the machine learning engineer that deals with credit models. And what they do is to productionize and maintain AI and ML, I mean, machine learning models for underwriting and risk monitoring. We have the credit decisioning engineer. This is one of the most interesting parts in credit tech. I've lived it. And what we basically do is to implement and optimize automated credit decision system and rule engines, right? We have the risk platform engineer, and what they basically do is to develop internal system that manage, monitor, and report on credit risk portfolios. We have the credit product manager, right? That's a mix of a product manager and someone with credit risk experience. And what they basically do is they lay the roadmap for digital lending or credit products, and they ensure that they are technically feasible. We have the credit fraud detection engineer. I mean, these roles, they are connected, right? And they are based off recent trend in the credit space. The rate of fraud is on the rise, right? So there is need for a credit fraud detection engineer. And what they basically do is to build algorithms and systems to detect fraudulent application and transactions. These are roles that normal manual underwriting might spot them, but there's a chance that they will be able to, miss quite a number of things. We have, still talking about fraud, sorry to deviate a bit, we have some frauds that are not even the credit application based. They are even based off the IP of the applicant, right? They are based off a number of variables that once you have algorithms in place, it would be able to spot such applications, right? We have softwares that can even bypass some of the company's credit rules. By experience, there was a time where we limited loan applications to a particular geolocation, right? I mean, but with the use of a simple VPN, that rule can be bypassed, right? Because the location that will be sent would be the location from the VPN, right? But I mean, we have tools built by credit fraud detection engineers that can even spot whether a device is using a VPN, right? So the space is moving fast, right? And we as risk practitioners, we need to move with that trend, right? There is need for moving with the trend in order to remain relevant, right? So, why is credit tech the future of lending? The answer is simple, right? Because the lending industry is shifting, like I mentioned, is moving fast from manual decision making to automated systems, right? When you able to connect with some of these leading digital lenders, you would hear stuff like our processes are automated. We use AI models, we use ML models. I mean, these were not in existence, I mean, years back, and you have no idea what it's going to be like in the next 2, 3 years from now. So, yeah. And recently, I mean, in recent times, there is improved data accessibility and technology innovations are driving these transformations, right? People are making decisions based off the applicant's device metadata, right? They're able to score with additional, I mean, alternative data other than, oh, this is the record we can see on the bank statement, oh, this is what we can see on the customer's credit history. Companies, I mean, lenders are now leveraging on alternative data, right? And risk and technology integration is becoming the new competitive advantage in credit. The rate at which we are having innovation in credit risk in terms of the technologies that we have, it's also moving very fast. That for credit professionals to be able to stay relevant, you need to obscure yourself. And this session will be able to make you navigate what is going to be the next step for you, right? Moving on, tech is not complex. I had this mindset that, oh, when it comes to tech, when it comes to programming, um, it's difficult, right? Because I had tried, and at that time, I had this mindset blocker that I just couldn't move on. But trust me, the mindset has changed because I've been able to know that programming is logical, is not magical, right? Um, yeah, please feel free to also interact in the chat just in case you have comments or you have quite a number of things you would like me to touch on during the course of this session. Yeah, so coding is not magic, it is just structured logic. I mean, the languages might differ, but the thinking remains the same, right? Um, yeah. It is quite shocking that you might not know that you already know the basics, right? Quite a number of us, I mean, a number of you would have used Excel, and indirectly, Excel has actually taught you the basics of coding because the if statements are conditional logic, right? And it's technically more or less the same concept when it comes to programming, right? And another thing you need to know is mindset over mechanism. When you perceive the stack or when you perceive tech to be complex, it sort of hinders you from not being able to, achieve what you want to achieve, right? So, I mean, the first thing is to start and focus on what should happen, right? But by the time you try, you let the code make it happen. During the course of this session, you'll be able to see how you can break down your journey from being someone that the mindset has blocked and also someone that is able to, have a hands-on experience on using these tools that were once almost impossible to use, right? Now, you can see um, four tools. The first is Excel, the next is Python, the next is R, and we have PHP, right? Each code that you have in these tools, they are doing the same function, but the syntax is just sort of different. For Excel, if you want to return a particular, data, what you just need to do is to reference the cell. That's cell referencing, because the cell exists. The cell has been defined. Have you tried to reference a cell that does not exist in Excel? It's definitely going to return an error, right? Now, what the Excel is doing is if a cell is less than 600, what happens? Return high risk. Else, what should happen in case that the data in that cell is not less than 600? It goes further to check for something else. That, okay, if that same cell is less than or equal to 700, return medium risk, right? So what happens if it still doesn't meet the first and second criteria? Return low risk. So what that means is every item that does not satisfy the first and second condition, right, would return the last condition, which is low risk. Now, that same line of code transferred into Python is the same, but the difference is you have to define a function and a variable, which is the credit risk and also the score, right? The credit risk is a function and the score is a variable. So you now say if that score in the credit risk function is less than 600, return high risk. But if it is not, now notice that the Python uses elif. It's saying that if the first is not satisfied, it's using elif because there's a third condition coming, right? That's if the score is less than or equal to 700, return medium risk, else return low risk, right? In R, it's technically the same too, right? But the major difference that you can spot between the Python and the R is the function is not defined, right? But it's still, pointing to a particular variable, which is score. And it's saying if the score is less than 600, return high risk. Else, if the score is less than or equal to 700, return medium risk. And if it does not satisfy any of these conditions, what should you return? Low risk. And also the same for PHP, right? So in some way, this syntax are different, but the logic behind it is the same. And that was what I meant by you have the basics. It is not magic, it is just logic. Once you're able to apply logic to your approach to handling information, then you're on the right track. Moving on, bridging the divide between traditional and digital lending, right? For the traditional lending space, what it basically involves is manual reviews. I mean, paper documentation. I mean, it has even advanced that, okay, paper documentations are not really relevant part. You can send your documentation via emails and whatever channel the lender has availed to the obligor, right? And the decision is usually based on guts and instincts and even experience. There was a time, because I have lived it, when we had an incident of fraudulent applications, and the moment I see someone that was bias, right? And those are the kind of things that manual review would actually will give the underwriter or the credit risk analyst, right? Because the person is looking like someone from a particular region, and because there was a trend at that time of fraudulent application from a particular region, the application was basically declined, right? So the traditional lending scope, it has to do with your guts, right? And also your experience, what you have seen, right? And that is not the best approach, if you ask me, right? The approach is almost not scalable, and it is very slow to process. I mean, files can spend up to 48 hours, sometimes 72 hours on a queue of the reviewer. I mean, and also under traditional lending, we can see that the risk assessment basically relies on historical credit data. They take credit reports as very important. I mean, regardless of whether there was a reporting error, regardless of whether the recent credit performance of the user is actually on par. I mean, it is basically on guts and historical credit data. And from my own point of view, and from a large number of risk practitioner point of view, it is less precise and often subjective. I mean, decision making is subjective. All right. Now, digital lending. This is the next big thing. Automation is the driver. We have automated loan engines that streamlines approval based off the business logic, of course, right? We have API enabled seamless data integration. That's where the alternative data I mentioned earlier comes in. We have data-driven scoring models that increase precision based off what you have in your system and also what you have from third-party data platform. You're able to make informed decisions based on the character of that customer. The digital lending scope is actually highly scalable and it has faster turnaround time. And that is why on some platforms you can get as high as 3 million in less than 5 minutes. While on other platforms, for you to get that same value, you have to, wait up to like 5 days, sometimes more and sometimes less. Right. And it is efficient and it also easy to evaluate the your risk decisions. So this is basically the difference between traditional lending and the digital lending scope. Right, one is based on guts, the other is based on data and informed decision making. Moving on, so what kind of lending do we categorize as being smart? Obviously, it is one that leverages on speed and accuracy. And that is where the loan engine comes in, right? It is automated. There are no mistakes. It is based off what you have configured. And that is why if I should ask anyone on this call that what is 3.333 times 2.2224, I mean, it's quite easy, but it will take time for you to process. But when you punch these same figures in a calculator, it gives you instant response. And this is what Loan Engine does. What takes an underwriter about 40 minutes to do, it evaluates the same logic in under, 1 minute. A decision is being made, right? And a smart lending also incorporates alternative data. The importance of alternative data cannot be overlooked, right? Because there is more. I was recently having a chat with one of the industry leader, and it was like, oh, most of our reviews they have good credit, ratings. There was no history of default, and it's just quite shocking that the default amongst those that even have good credit rating at the point of review is actually alarming, right? What this means is you can't bank on the credit report alone. You can also bank on alternative data, right? Um, Use of behavioral insights to better understand the borrower's risk profile. We have quite a number of lenders that are already adopting um, this, in the sense that a typical example of leveraging on behavioral insight is people trying to see what's the gambling rate of a particular borrower, right? What's the sweep rate? Is the customer a sweeper? Is it trying to, influence the assessment of the credit by just, adding more credit transaction and, in turn, there's a corresponding debit. There are quite a number of insights that you can get from just the bank statement alone, right? So imagine an underwriter having to review a bank statement and trying to manually spot um, for a salary earner, for example, what day does he finish the salary? These are something that can be configured with a simple algorithm, and it's able to get you that information within um, seconds, right? So smart lending also enables the lender to predict the risk more accurately because there are no errors, or there are little or less errors when it comes to automation. And yeah, it also promotes AI-driven fraud detection, right? Nigeria is known to be a market that um, you have to treat every borrower as one that has the intent of defrauding the lender, right? So um, a smart lender would make provisions for fraud detection using tools and also leveraging on AI. We have quite a number of platforms that we don't really need to code. It's just know how the system works. So this is the the path risk practitioners should be looking into in order to remain relevant. How can you come in when people are talking about loan engine? Do you have an idea of how it works? What kind of data does it ingest? Right? When they are talking about alternative data, do you have an understanding of it? I mean, when you talk about the behavior of a customer, is it just tied to credit history or what you can see on the bank statement? And when you're talking about predictive modeling, do you have an understanding of what it involves? Credit risk has gone to a level above approve and decline, right? Because we are moving to an era where if you don't move, I mean, you might be left behind, like my Nigerian brothers just say, right? So, yeah, moving on. What are the pillars that drive credit tech innovation, right? Sorry, 1 minute. Oh, okay. Yeah, the four pillars driving credit tech innovation. The first is automation through loan origination system, which is LOS, and also decision engines. I mean, loan engine cannot be overlooked. You need to start thinking of how you can make contributions towards when a loan engine is being built, be it one that is built internally or one that is built by an external vendor, right? This is definitely in the coming years going to reduce manual approvals, right? There will be no such thing as an application is manually, approved when it comes to digital lending. It has to come with loan engines, and also the use of AI in this decision making. Another driver is rich data integration. That's okay. That's a combination of credit bureau information and alternative data as well as behavioral insight from risk assessment. You can get insights from quite a number of information as far as a customer is concerned, from the device metadata to um all right, we'll get to that. From device metadata to the transaction pattern based off what you can see on the bank statement, and also based off what you can see on the transaction. If you are a lender that also supports transaction, maybe you deal with fund transfer, bill payments, and all of that, right? The third is user experience design. That's how do this customer get access to credit that you're providing is actually one of the important things that risk practitioners should look into, because in time past and even up to now, we have some sort of friction between the sales team and the risk analyst, right? But at the top of our mind, the customer experience should be one of the key drivers for our decision. So uh, creating seamless compliant lending journeys that enhance borrower engagement and satisfaction is one of the things that you should be able to look into, because these customers, what they need is feedback. If you are rejecting their loan, tell them. If you are approving it, tell them. Just have that feedback, and that takes us to risk feedback loop, right? um and this can be continuously improved. In credit, there's something that is called the reject inference. That's you looking back into the transactions or the applications that you had declined in the past, and you're trying to, see what category of these customers that you've been rejecting their loans can you start expanding credit to, and at what point can you start doing that, right? As risk practitioners, for us to be able to remain relevant in this space, you need to have a mindset um, shift, right? um, you need to shift from the rigid policy enforcement to experimentation, right, for adaptive solution. And rather than having to ask that, oh, what is the rule here? I mean, the question should be, what kind of insight can I get from this? Oh, the rule says this, but based off what you can see on this customer's profile and behavioral data, this is the insight you've been able to get, right? We also need to embrace curiosity, right? Rather than having to swiftly make decision on customers' request, you need to be curious as, you know, what can we actually do to make our decision making better? I mean, like an example we have here is, instead of blocking an unusual credit case because of policy, there's room for testing, right?
even if it is for a very thin sample size. I mean, these are the vows that risk practitioners should be lending to. We have some lenders out there that they are giving loans to even customers that have history of written off loans, right? And their books are still looking good because rather than leveraging on just their credit character, they have additional data points that they can leverage on, and the model is quite accurate, right? So what is actually essential is our mindset as risk practitioners, right? Um, the key skills for credit tech professionals. Um, yeah, I can see some questions here. What are the types of fraud often encountered? You can drop your questions during before the end of the session. We have a question and answer, and I would be able to answer all your questions. Right. The key skills for credit tech professionals. The first is product thinking, and that comes from you being able to translate what the customer needs, what the market needs into technical requirements and usable lending features, right? In recent time, there's a trend that people are moving from the normal um, take a 6 month loan, pay back in installment to a limit approach. You have your limit approved. You can go there at any time for a stipulated period. You have access to credit. There is no need for approval or rejection, right? And this stems from people thinking that most people just want to be appraised once, right? And though you have your limit approved for some of these products, but the models are being trained, from time to time. And that's why some of these people that have approved limits can have their limit reduced. And the users will be wondering what happened is because the model has been run on that customer's profile. And what the customer was eligible for at the time of approval had changed. So as risk professionals, product thinking should be on top of the list as what skills do you need to stay relevant in um, the lending scope in the coming years. Data proficiency is one of the most important skills that you also need to leverage on. And I mean, the use of Python, the use of spreadsheets, whatever spreadsheet you are comfortable with. It's not compulsory you are expert at it. We'll get back into it, but you should be able to have, basic understanding, and you should have deep understanding of one. I mean, we have Excel, we have Google Sheets. Some are more um, comfortable using Google Sheets than Excel. While some are more comfortable using Excel and spread, but you should be able to have an understanding of how both works. They are almost the same, but sometimes the functions are different, right? And SQL cannot be taken out. It's going to give you a competitive advantage if you are able to query data, able to analyze data that you cannot see, and that is also where Python comes in. You are not seeing the data, but you're able to, call the data, make some analysis on it. If you're able to leverage on these tools, Python, good command of spreadsheets, SQL, you're on the right path, right? It gives you an edge and it makes you relevant in the current credit tech space. We have API understanding, right? Some of us have not seen what a postman interface looks like. Talk less of what get or what post actually means. The API is more like a system that communicates between two platforms, right? You have a system and you need information from another system. You need something to be able to get that information from the other system. That is where the API comes in. So as risk practitioners, we need to look into understanding how API works. You don't have to be the mastermind behind the logic, but you should be able to even test some things using APIs, right? Um, Having this understanding would also make you relevant. And agile practice, we have different scope of product delivering product. The agile is one of the most important one, and this is running iterative sprints and also prioritizing features collaborating in cross-functional teams to deliver and learn quickly. In summary, what that means is you want to deliver a loan product, for example, and let's say you have um, consumer loan, you have fast loan, you have SME loan, and the company wants to digitize this product. If you're using an agile approach, you'll be able to, prioritize what features should we actually reduce first. You'd actually be able to work on MVPs. I mean, when you have this understanding, it's going to make you remain relevant, right? Product thinking, data proficiency, understanding how API works, and also agile practices. Now, there is actually a talent gap in the credit tech space, and it is no news because quite a number of credit professionals are not upskilling, maybe just yet. And I believe quite a number of us on this call will be able to, upskill in order to remain relevant and be able to apply for some of these roles. I've seen cases in recent times where some companies have opening for a particular role, and that role is opened for months, compared to when a company is looking for, oh, we need a credit analyst, and between a week they've interviewed and they've gotten their best candidate. But we have some roles that are actually pivotal to the decision making of the company, and those roles are being filled because they've not been able to get a best fit for that role. There is high demand, but the supply is limited, right? The market needs more credit tech professionals. They need someone that understand the engineering part of the business as well as the risk part of the business. A combination of the two is what I mean the lenders are looking for at this time. Now, we have a problem of skill mismatch. Like I mentioned, one of the top in demand skills roles in this year is the product manager for credit. You can have someone that is good with product management, can roll out product, but the product is not being rolled out the way it should. Or even if it is rolled out, there are always bugs, there are always things to, change. Sometimes maybe it has to do with interest rate, it has to do with how the data is computed, it has to do with, oh, they are not using some important variables. But imagine you having an understanding of how credit works alongside the experience you've built over time, and you want to build a credit product. Imagine how easy it's going to be. I mean, and you have product knowledge. It's going to be a easy peasy for you because you have the understanding of what credit entails when it comes to interest rate, when it comes to calculation and everything, with a mix of what you have learned in product development. You are the perfect fit for such roles, right? So we have a problem with skill mismatch. Now, the organizational impact, there is also a problem or a gap with difficulty assembling effective cross-functional teams because when they are unable to, get, you have somebody that understands product, you have somebody that understands credits. I mean, two different entities. The one that understands credit does not know how API works. The one that understands products does not know how credit works. I mean, you would keep having back and forth, and it slow down, the deliverable of the particular product that is expected to be rolled out, right? Now, the solution actually builds the pipeline, right? It is not too late, right? You just need to start having targeted learning pathways, upskilling, reskilling, um, and this is going to improve, our relevance in the credit space. Yeah, amidst all the in-demand credit tech roles, I'll be focusing on products for the rest of this call. Um, like I mentioned, credit risk practitioners, professionals are best fit for a, a company that is driven by credit products, right? Because you have a combination of credit risk skills, right? And you also have an understanding of product management skills, like it's a match made in heaven. So when you have a combination of both skills, you will be able to excel as a product manager, a product owner. Now, how can you start learning this product? We have free materials online. You can start learning foundational concept with product school. You can check on the internet, you would get that. You can leverage on YouTube tutorials and also Marty Kagan's books, right? This would actually help you in starting your product journey. And you also need to engage actively with fintech communities in order for you to expand your network and also to gain insights. And yeah, volunteer is something that is very important. You need to volunteer on side projects to gain hands-on experience on practical examples of how the product actually works, and also with the kind of tools that they use in delivering product, the likes of Jira and Co. And yeah, confidence is actually one of the most important. I mean, mistake, everyone make mistakes, and I'm not sure there's anyone here that has never made mistake before, right? So mistake is accepted, but by the time you make mistake with confidence, right? Yeah, so you build your confidence and take on responsibility, create prototypes using be it Excel or be it Figma. And you ask me, how can you create prototype using Excel? I mean, you're trying to roll out a product that has to do with credit. Obviously, there will be an application, there will be a decision. Before that decision engine is being created, you can actually create a spreadsheet version of it. And in terms of using Figma for prototype, maybe you're creating a lending journey. You can actually use Figma to show what the user journey would be like, what the customer, I mean, what the user sees at every point in time, right? Um, you have an advantage. Everyone on this call, you have an advantage because you have a deep understanding of risk and compliance, right? And this creates trust from any company that is hiring you as a product manager because they believe that you have the in-depth knowledge of what the risk is about, right? You also have the ability to connect, credit logic with what the customer actually needs, right? You've seen it, you've lived it, and you've experienced it, right? um you would be bridging the gap between the business, the technology, and what the customer should experience, right? And this obviously drives innovation, right? Because it saves the company time because you have an understanding more like the life cycle, right, from application to approval or rejection, to when the customer gets the loan, to monitoring that particular loan, to collecting back the loan, right? So you have um, an overall view of what a credit journey looks like, right? And as a product manager, it's a big advantage for you. So rather than allowing people without this risk background, it's time for risk practitioners to take up additional responsibilities. I'm not saying being a credit analyst is bad, but I'm saying that the times are moving fast. Automation is the next big thing. You have to remain relevant, right? And by the time you look at how long it takes you to get to a credit manager role, I mean, on top of your head, you know the number of years it takes than, being a product leader. Um, yeah, the 90-day roadmap for transitioning into credit tech. From 2026, Pivox Technology would be um, training risk practitioners, I mean professionals that are interested on a 90-day roadmap on how to transition into credit tech. Um, right? So the first month we would have to focus on analytics, which is a very important one. So we have from now till the end of the year for those that will be interested to actually brush up your skills, watch tutorials like the previous slides I've mentioned. We'll be looking at in the first month how to use SQL, Python, I mean the basics, and also feature engineering and model evaluation. By the second month, you'll be looking at the product and customer, how you can, learn credit product design and how customer journey should have a seamless user experience. And in the third month, we'll be using case study. Um, you'd have to be able to have hands-on experience on how our solution works. So that means you'll be working with us during this time, right? Yeah, overcoming obstacles. For you to be able to transition easily from core credit risk to credit tech, you need to adopt a growth mindset, right? You need to also learn to have basic data skills. Data can, I'm not sure there's any role in recent time that does not require at least you having a proper understanding of spreadsheet, right? So you need to brush up your spreadsheet skills, your SQL fundamentals, and how to interpret data, data manipulation, play with data, be able to get whatever information you need from the data that you have, right? And the basics of coding would also be very easy. You need to learn the coding basics for Python. Python is not complex. Mm, Again, majority of the problems that most people have while learning Python programming is they do not have the practical application of what they have learned on whatever platform they've learned it from. But imagine you've learned it and you have something to apply it on, right? Yeah. So and you also need to understand product concepts, what decision flows looks like, APIs as mentioned earlier, and also on the writing logics. What kind of loan should be approved, declined, what kind should how to set threshold and all of that. Yeah, and also you need to use structured learning and practice. That's taking courses, project, and the role of having a mentor cannot be overlooked. You need somebody to guide you on your journey towards what you want to achieve, right? I hope with this point you'll be able to, have a new mindset and change, have an idea of what you want to achieve in the coming months. Again, the future of credit belongs to risk tech innovators. You have the experience of risk, right? And risk can be broken down into different parts. We have the underwriting part, that's the credit appraisal. We also have the collections part too. So whether you are the credit appraisal side or you are in the collections part, both parties are mitigating risk, right? And you can be relevant um, in the space. Yeah. So I think at this point I'll be looking at the questions that we have in the chat. We have the first I have here is on fraud. What are the We have quite a number of comments here. What are the types of fraud often encountered in credit risk? Well, I'll be able to give you based off credit committee, based off personal experience, yeah, and based off what some of the frauds that the industry is quite aware of. The first is impersonation, right? Is a fraud that is being widespread. Impersonation, you would be able to see that when some customers are being contacted for a particular loan and you get feedback such as, I'm not aware of such loans, I don't even know your company. And this is because the user information have been used to um, to access credit, right? Impersonation fraud is one that um, is common. Another type of fraud is I wouldn't want to go too deep because some are actually confidential. So, but on the surface, another one is system gaming. And what that system gaming means is the applicant is trying to create a cadence that is not the original cadence for the purpose of applying for a loan, right? So this kind of applicants are usually they take their time, they build their statements, and that is where having access to behavioral data comes in. So what they do is they make their bank statement look as though, I mean, as these frauds are being detected, they're also moving, they're advancing how um, they are, approaching the fraud, right? Um, so like I was saying, they try to make the application look very solid because for traditional lenders, I mean, this fraud are basically more, this kind of fraud is basically more on the traditional lender part, those that are not leveraging on automation yet, right? They're able to inflate the kind of transaction on their bank statements. You can see large credits for every corresponding credit. There is a debit. So they're trying to game your system in order to be able to access an amount that ideally they are not eligible for, right? Maybe if they are not gaming, they can get up to £1,000. Sorry, up to like 100,000 naira, or yeah. And by the time they inflate the transactions on their statement, they're able to get up to 1 million naira based off the transaction pattern you're seeing on the bank statement, right? We also have another kind of fraud that is, common is um, loan farming. Yeah, loan farming is a case where a particular group of people, in quotes, we can use the word syndicate, they go to a region that is populated with people that are not really exposed, in quotes, right? In some way, the northern part of Nigeria. I mean, there is a class of people that um, I'm trying to be careful with my use of words here, but I mean, they go to this region and they tell them that, hey, there's a scheme, and all we need from you is to get your BVN, I mean, get your information, and a particular body, be it federal government or whatever body, is sharing money, more like a grant, right? So these customers give you the information. For systems that even need liveliness check, they smile at it. So the liveliness check passes, right? So, and once they use their information to access credits, I mean, if the credit they were able to access is say £20,000, they give this group of people a particular percentage of that money, and the other percentage, yeah. So I mean, these are the fraud that are actually happening in recent times, right? Yeah, I think I've been able to answer your question, Lazarus. Somebody said Python is actually complex. Now, this is one of the mindset thing. It depends on what you are using it for. Yeah, it is complex. The same way Excel is actually complex. Google Sheet is actually complex. There are quite a number of things that you could do with this spreadsheet. I mean, you can run automations. We have plugins that you can use on these systems, right? So it depends on, you have to take it slow, define what you need this tool for, and build on it. That way, it's not complex. You are using it for a purpose, right? Just like you have a television, you can use it to watch Netflix, you can use it for gaming. So just define your purpose and just go with that purpose. The TV might not be a perfect example though. But yeah, um yeah, so we have another question. Credit Tech is leveraging on digital technology. What is the impact in implementation of KYC? Yeah, KYC has improved over time. Like, because of the advancement in credit technology, we have quite a number of providers that provide, I mean, quite a number of technology companies that provide KYC service, right? I'm trying to look for the best way to answer your question. Yeah, KYC can eliminate risk to a certain level, but not all type of risk. But again, as risk practitioners, risk cannot be eliminated, but it can only be what mitigated, right? So the KYC is able to curb some of these fraudulent transactions, is able to do its core purpose why it is being designed for the liveliness check, the proper tiering of customers, I mean, and the verification of customers, right? So um, it's innovative and it's growing. But in terms of the kind of risk that it can, look at the example I gave about the loan farming. These guys will do the liveliness check. I mean, they put their information voluntarily, even if you want to do an audio verification, like some softwares are now doing, they're able to identify your voice, right? Um, it will still pass. So yeah, KYC is important in um, in credit tech. I mean, it's one of the risk tech features that on the enterprise level, because we have different kind of risk. There's the credit risk. There is also an aspect of risk that has to do with the enterprise, right? I hope I've been able to answer your question as Mustafa Jibola. What are the ways the authenticity of a bank statement submitted by customers be ascertained? And that is how to detect when a bank statement is doctored. That is part of the solutions that Pivox technology offer. Most of these statements that are altered or doctored, they actually come from a source, usually from the customer. So the customer had to send you the file, right? When you upload such file on our platform, we have quite a number of people that offer the same solution, right? But when you come to our platform, you upload such file, it tells you whether the bank statement is altered or whether it is not altered. So this is based off machine learning algorithms, right? We've been able to understand um, what the particular template of a bank statement actually looks like. So if it is different from a bank statement that the system is aware of, it flags it, right? If it notice some inconsistency in the bank statement in terms of what is the total credit, the total debit, does it correspond with the closing balance? I mean, for all the transactions you have on that bank statement, are the credit and debit corresponding to the corresponding, I'm using corresponding so much, to the balance. You know what I mean? So there are different algorithms that can be put in place as far as statement transactions are concerned. So yeah, we have solutions that handle bank statement and they are very easy to detect which is doctored. Yeah. So again, thanks all for your time. Um, this is what's the time, and I believe by now there should be a mindset shift for the risk professionals on this call, and for the fresh graduates we have here, or you're still in school. Um, Rather than having to look at, oh, I'm going to look for a customer success role, it's time you can also leverage on our training that will be coming first, come next year, on how you can transition from credit risk or transition into credit risk and also move into credit tech.